Yes, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back up here, and I think this is an exciting part of the show because it's always really neat to talk about the perspectives and philosophies around exciting emerging new opportunities. And in many ways, with smart TV and that revolution, we're going through yet again the same challenges that we've had with smartphones and computers and all sorts of other devices. So do we learn from our mistakes, or do we keep making the same mistakes over and over again? I think that'll be sort of an interesting subset of this topic today. So I want to introduce our two panelists, and I'm going to moderate today. I think it's going to be a very exciting panel. We've got some really deep philosophies and deep convictions, so you'll hear some good difference of opinion. And before I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, I do want to make this interactive as well, so rather than just leaving 10 minutes at the end, put your hand up if you have any questions. I think, yeah, this is a wireless mic, so either I'll come around or we've got other mics as well. But if we say anything prolific and you have a response or a question or comment that comes off of that, don't hesitate until the end. Please jump right in. So with that, I think we're very lucky to have a great panel, and I like things when they're small because it gives everyone an opportunity to really dig below the surface and get right down to it. From Webaloo, we've got the co-founder and CEO, ZEEVI, and from Sidekick, the CEO, BENDOV. We had a wonderful dinner last night. We got into some pretty good debate, so I think that was a prelude to what we'll see today. I'm going to ask you guys to just really quickly introduce yourselves and introduce your organizations.
Okay, nice to meet you all. My name is ZEEVI. I am the CEO and co-founder of Webaloo. And what Webaloo actually does is try to answer all the questions that you guys heard before about how you can actually create content for smart TVs and actually find the right technologies and the right solutions so actually you can develop it once and enjoy everything. So Webaloo is actually a fully web-based solution that uses your smartphone as the controller. And you guys can check it out later after the panel.
Hi everybody, I'm Guy. I'm managing Sidekick, video game developer. We were very lucky 3 years ago to have a client called PrimeSense. These are the guys who made part of the brains inside the Kinect camera. And very early on we worked with them on new interfaces, motion interfaces, later touch interfaces, and virtual reality. From there, we got to develop game for the Kinect, for the Xbox Kinect, smart TVs, all-in-one PCs, and other platforms, covering a lot of new and interesting platforms that are about to come out in the next couple of years.
Very cool. Thanks, guys. Let's start things off at a high level, and we'll get into the details really quickly. But both of you are obviously participating in the smart TV space in one way or another. Can you share your perspectives on smart TV and your general philosophies and kind of the direction you think they're headed?
I'm very excited about smart TVs. I think there's, you see a lot of people who are looking forward to having yet another platform coming in. Smart TVs look like a very natural next step. That said, I'm also very, very cautious about the timing of how things will be.
I agree with Guy regarding this. I think that also the problem that we have with smart TVs that is different from what we had with the iPhone experience is that there's no one company that actually picked up the glove and said this is how it's supposed to be done to show off and show how the industry is supposed to take off and look for. So you have a lot of companies that don't have the same possibilities like what Apple did with the Revolution. And I'm just waiting to see how they can actually standardize this and give us a solution that actually works for the consumer and not just a gimmick for the smart TV itself.
We have a question already.
I just wanted to see if it worked, actually. I actually have a question for Guy. You mentioned that Sidekick is making natural motion style games with PrimeSense and Kinect.
Right.
What does that have to do with ITV? I don't understand the connection.
So a lot of TV makers are obviously looking to integrate new controls into their TVs. We all know about remote controls and even motion remote controls like the Hillcrest and Philips One, but they're also looking to use Kinect-like devices to control the TV. Very much like, actually Microsoft very much succeeded to do with the Xbox and the Kinect for the non-gaming content.
In my talk earlier today, I talked about the smart TV space being very much the Wild West, no clearly defined direction. What are your thoughts on what the biggest problem here is, and what do you think it's going to take to rectify this? And you know, Guru, you've sort of alluded to this. Somebody needs to throw down the glove and lead the pack. Is that the solution, or do you think there are other ways that we can start to move in that direction quickly?
I think the problem will be that until we actually have a community of developers that are actually picking up the glove and starting to work with a manufacturer or a number of manufacturers and start to standardize exactly what the hardware requirements are for this smart TVs and of course the technology that is needed in order to develop, you're going to have a lot of small developers that maybe will pick up the glove because they want to try and get their games onto the platforms while they're still new, like the first developers on the iPhone. But what you're not going to actually see is the big developers coming and saying, okay, we're going to try to push our new product or new application into this space because they already know how to monetize on the available content that they have, and they're not going to just try new things and pick up the gloves themselves.
And Guy, what's your perspective? You're obviously taking a unique approach to this as well.
Well, we're working with a number of OEMs, and when people refer to the market as Wild West, I think the ships maybe just left Europe now. We're way before Wild West. Seriously, there's a lot of balls in the air right now, both in terms of operating system, platforms, control devices. There's still the entire debate about is it a one smart screen or two screens. And everybody's coming up with their own unique angle into the market. That's, you know, as a techie, as a geek, it's very exciting. But definitely the business is still waiting for kind of all the balls to land down and see what happens.
I want to stir it up a bit, if you allow me. And my question is, what exactly makes these TVs so smart at the moment? Because I really look at these TVs, and you have the Roku box, and you have the Apple TV that have been out there for quite some time, and they've given you all these features on video on demand and even some, you know, small applications and games that are available. But what exactly is so smart about our TVs today when we're using standard controllers to control them and you only have one controller? If we're talking about the gaming experience or the laid-back couch experience, then you're talking about family entertainment or more than one person. Because if you want to engage with one person, then you have your private screens for that. You don't use the big TV on your living room to control that. So what's so smart about them, and how can you actually engage with the entire you know, family that's sitting right now on the sofa in front of you and want to consume the content on that smart TV?
Yeah, and I think that's the billion-dollar question. I mean, I think that's the crux of the issue that we're having with smart TV as an evolving platform. My talk earlier, I talked about the fact that smart TV was more like above-average TV or satisfactory TV.
There you go.
And I think that the term and the definition comes from the fact that we've gone from a pure linear media broadcast mechanism to now kind of two-way interaction. But it has a long ways to go, and I'm probably one of the last few people still with a BlackBerry.
What is that?
Yes, it's starting to become an obsolete device, but the fact is that we all walk around with screens that have two-way communication. We can harness this screen to do a lot more with than simply to get information off of in a one-way manner. TV needs to get there, but one of the things that I talked about is that we're taking a PC-centric desktop approach towards television, and I think that's part of what's broken really badly. Now, you guys have each taken your own individual direction on trying to define the experience. So, you know, in our case, we believe that from a content perspective, it's not about aggregation, it's about curation and delivering very socially engaging, almost unique experiences for the living room. So I'm going to throw the question back to you. I mean, from your perspective, you've taken different directions. What's your rationale in thinking about your philosophies? You know, yours from an interaction standpoint, Gur, and Guy, from your perspective, it's about the input mechanism really more than anything else, but still developing custom content underneath it. Why do you think that's the right approach?
First of all, it's a different platform because it sits in the middle of our living room. It's a very social, in terms of local social, not the cloud or the internet social type of experience. And for us, these were values in everything that we've done, regardless of technology, whether the game runs on a TV, on a set-top box, or on a PC that's connected to it. In most of the games that we've created for that experience, we try to cater both the gameplay and the experience of a few people, and not only one person that plays with the screen. And every time we've done that, we really created a kind of a party event in front of the screen, and that was proved to be huge, huge success every time that we've done that. Putting that together with, you know, the right interface, like a motion interface, like Kinect or similar to Kinect, it creates a wonderful, wonderful event that takes people from their laid-back kind of couch situation into being way more active in front of the TV. It doesn't work for everything, but it works for a lot of great get-together with our family or friends situations.
I'd like to answer it's two different points that you actually have to address when you talk about the TV. First of all, it's the engagement and the experience that you actually want to pass through your application, game, or any content that you want to put on the TV. And the other thing itself is the control. Like Guy said before, first of all, you have to have a control that is easy to use. You're talking about a laid-back experience on one side, and on the other side, you want the users to be able to control their TV in a seamless and easy manner, and let's even say a bit more natural than, you know, putting on your lap a keyboard and mouse, or taking a primitive style remote control with up-down buttons that you can't really scroll or input or engage with the content that's on the screen like you would have on any other device because of the sitting situation that you're currently at. The second thing that you're talking about is the engagement. And again, like Guy said, we believe that engagement will come in two manners at least. The first one will be content that is more informational. It can be entertainment like TV, VOD, and stuff like that. It can be scrolling through the CNN website to actually get content and know what's going on regarding news. So that's something that you would actually engage with as a single person reading that, or maybe a number of people that are actually staring at the screen and not really engaging. It's just a one-way stream of information coming from the TV to the users. But if we talk about games, then you want the whole family to start engaging in that. And when you want the whole family to start engaging, you need to find the right content that they can actually play and engage with. And what we do at Webaloo is we actually try to bring a new kind of experience that we call a true social experience. Because if you guys have a family or friends, usually when you're watching TV, then one of the kids is sitting playing with his iPhone, the other one is playing with the iPad, the mother is reading her magazine, and the father is watching the news on TV. That's not social. That's being in your own little screen by yourself doing whatever you want. And like Guy said, the engagement that we're actually looking for is party-style gaming, something that the whole family can actually engage with and have fun. And if you start looking at those games, then you need to start finding smart devices to actually engage with. Because if you want to play games like card games or the great success game that we just had you know, on the iPhone, which is Draw Something, now you have Sound Pop or something like that, you actually need a second screen to actually engage in those games on the shared screen, because you want someone to be drawing on his mobile device and you want other people to start like guessing what the content or what the drawing is all about. If you're talking about Song Pop, then you want a controller that you can actually look at the names of the songs that are currently playing, and you need to select that. So you actually need the second screen. And there's even something more to this, because we're talking about a split environment for that specific game where you have shared information displayed on the main screen, and you have the private information or your selection of information on your private screen. So you actually do need a second screen to engage with these kind of party game style games on the TV.
So obviously the input mechanism over time has evolved pretty dramatically. For those of you in the audience, and I think there's only a few of you who are old enough to remember, as kids, you were the input mechanism. So when your parents said change the channel, you were the one running back and forth to change it. How many people remember when the first converter came out? Anyone? A couple of you? When you had that long wire, you had this really ugly brown box with the buttons, and then you could flick it sort of up, middle, down. And I think you had access to 39 channels. And then it got revolutionary when we had the first remote control come out, and then they've gotten more and more complicated since then. So I think what's interesting now is that as we go through this inflection point of input, we're starting to see this plethora of different types of thought processes around that. So, you know, in both of your cases, you guys are looking at input from, again, different perspectives. Do you think that this is really a catalyst to broad-scale adoption of smart TV as well as content on smart TV, or do you think it's just one facet of many things that have to change in the ecosystem?
Well, it's critical because, you know, in our world where gameplay is like the most important thing, control is actually a critical part of that. If you have a defining game for a platform, then the control will always be big part of that. And you know, if you look at platforms like the iPhone or the iPad, and you look at games like Fruit Ninja or Angry Birds, you have that obvious connection between everything, and these are, I think, good examples. When you try to bring that into the TV marketplace or into the TV ecosystem, you actually find out that you have many different controls. Even today, even just looking at the remote control part of the business without the new type of controls. Some people are using a second screen, some people don't. There's no standardization, there's no an obvious platform that you want to develop for. This is why, you know, I'm saying it's very early, but it's critical. We see that with every TV manufacturer that we work with, in every platform makers that we work with, and every technology maker that we work with, creating a great experience ties both the controls, the TV as a big screen in the middle of the room, and the overall capabilities to try to create a great game, great experience to their market. And for us, it's still kind of a search mission. Every time we're you know, going into a new path and trying to figure everything out for you know, for our clients.
Mm-hmm. I agree with Guy. I think that, I don't agree with Guy.
Oh, okay, good. Now you're going.
Well, I agree with Guy because I think that, first of all, the human interface to the machine itself is the most important thing to actually get things into mainstream. And in addition to that, I believe that the second level in that aspect is the user interface. And in order to actually, you know, you were talking about the first converter for the TVs, nobody would be able to use that today. You know, people are so easygoing and they want to start engaging with their content so fast that they would never use such a technology to actually consume content. And when you start putting a lot of friction on the way to this new technology, which is called the smart TV, then you really need to like smooth it out and allow them to start connecting with the content and consuming the content as easy as possible. And I believe that if the companies themselves and the manufacturers themselves don't find two important things, which is first of all the entire interface for their content, both on the TV and on their controller, and natural or, you know, the easiest way to actually connect and control that content, then they're going to have a big problem. And you know, Apple did an amazing job with this when they invented the touchscreen, because they said, let's just put a second, you know, let's put a small.
They didn't invent the touch.
They didn't invent it, but let's say that
a lot of credit.
They packaged it up correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had the hardware there and the software itself with the user interface that was easy. And when they marketed it out, they said, this is not a technology for geeks. This is good for kids at, you know, the age of 10. It's good for the grandmas at the age of 90, if, you know, if that's okay, 90 for grandmas. And anything in between. And you know, when Google came out with their phones, it was a bit more techy. And everybody said that. This is like for the Unix generation, for the kids who want to really customize. And you know, in the beginning, until they actually got everything smoothed out, then, you know, if you were a programmer and you liked all this stuff, you would get an Android. If you were a standard person that just wanted a clean interface, you would get an iPhone. Yeah. And I believe that that's the evolution that the smart TVs are going to have to take. And they're going to have to take into serious consideration how you engage with that content. Because right now what I'm seeing is everybody trying to build their own ecosystem in stores and not putting enough thinking and processing on the user interface and the secondary screen or the secondary controller.
Well, you know, and that's a good point. When Google TV came out, I think the Google remote control had 102 buttons. They actually went in completely the opposite direction, and this is a classic example of how that failed miserably. I think the remote control, as we know it today, has a certain universality to it. Everywhere in the world, people use it, they know how to use it, whether you're a grandma or a 5-year-old kid. Obviously, with Apple and iPhones and iPads, we've been able to achieve the same thing. With some of the input mechanisms that you guys have talked about, and you've really touched and glossed over the audience, don't you guys feel, or are you not afraid that you're fragmenting the audience more and more with input-based controls or with very specific multi-screen capabilities? Because in some ways, we're taking away that universality, aren't we?
Well, I think it depends on the implementation itself. I mean, if you're talking about, the main screens in the application, you can always mimic those kind of controls and actually create them as a virtual controller on a secondary screen. But then when you start going into specific content, that will be consumed by a specific audience and not by the mass audience, because I don't think a grandmother is going to be playing Angry Birds on a smart TV. Maybe she'll be scrolling through CNN or watching a movie or something like that. And of course, I take off my hat to the ones who do play Angry Birds on the TV. But the idea here is that because the screen itself is totally dynamic, then you can actually define it for the specific audience. And of course, just like Apple did, you can have guidelines to actually tell the developers to try to keep it as simple and as clean as possible, and then go as crazy as needed within the content itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think second screen is super complicated. I have to say, I just don't really get it for anybody who's not like super techie or super gamer person. I understand where people see a show and then using their second screen to figure out data about what they're seeing. But as a controller, I'm a bit puzzled about it. When I look at the market, I see a totally different shift. Actually see a shift into simplicity. If you look at the new controllers that LG have with their, I think it's called Magic Stick, it's practically a stick with 4 buttons, maybe, like a D-pad for us.
But then how exactly do you get all the other stuff on those TVs? You're talking about social. How do I send a message to my friend with a 4-button controller? How do I go to Facebook and start consuming the content?
I don't have an answer for that, but
I don't think LG has an answer either.
Right, and I've seen stuff like virtual keyboard and voice works actually pretty well. But overall, you look at controllers and actually instead of having more buttons, which actually failed with the Google example and there are a few others, you see simplicity. You see, just like Apple did, moving a lot of the control stuff on the big screen and not into your handheld device. Most people, it's TV. I mean, we're talking about crazy mass audience, bigger than phones and tablets, definitely. People need that simplicity. And as TV become, smarter and smarter, or at least offer you more features, you need some smart control, but the remote control can't hold it anymore. So they're taking simplicity, they're taking motion, like a Wiimote mechanic, or Kinect-like mechanic, where you either speak or move your hands to choose what you want to do. And I think that's great news. And if I need to do any type of game, I would probably look at an easier interface first that goes into a broader market than the more sophisticated solutions that are starting to build right now out there.
Mm-hmm. So with all of that being said, do you think that multi-screen support in general is really intended to head off this generation of distracted consumers and kids that almost suffer from ADD? Or do you actually think it's a legitimate input device and control mechanism?
Can I interrupt just a second? Who in the audience understands what they're talking about when they're talking about multi-screen? Does everybody get what that means? Yeah?
Who has kids?
Maybe it would be good. Maybe it would be good to just do a quick example of what multi-screen you're talking about.
Let me give an example. I'll ask the panelists to do the same thing, and then we'll dive back into that question. So with multi-screen support related to the living room, the television, what we're talking about is the ability to use your handheld device, whether it's an Android device or an iOS device, to essentially interact with your television and or have an extended experience. You can use that as a controller to play video games. You can use that as an adjunct to get more information about a television broadcast. So you can see the actors, you can see their profiles and bios, what other shows they're on. You can do things like, catch-up TV, etc. So really, it's, you know, the sky's the limit because you've now got a fully connected device that knows to a large extent what's happening on the television simultaneously. And then you guys can provide much more specific examples in terms of what you're doing with it.
Yeah, so in regards to what Guy said, maybe the solution would actually be some kind of a split between hardware and a secondary screen. But to get back to the point of the question, what Webaloo actually does is allow you to use your mobile device. Well, Webaloo is a bit more than that. Webaloo is a fully web-based solution that allows you to open a web browser and load into the web browser virtual entertainment system that is controllable by your mobile device. And when we say controllable by a mobile device, we actually use that second screen and our APIs to allow the third-party developers to develop any kind of content that they want for the mobile device to control the content that is displayed on the screen. And you know, we're not saying that this is a second screen experience, like we're trying to say that this is a multi-screen experience, because when we talk about the living room, we believe that some of the time there's going to be one person in front of that TV engaging with it, but a lot of the time, especially in the evenings when the whole family starts gathering in front of that TV, you want to have an option of allowing other people to engage with that content. And if you're talking about a family game like trivia or anything, you want the whole family to engage with that. And then you come up with a lot of interesting questions. First of all, if you have a physical controller, what are you going to do? Is it going to be a turn-based game when everybody's sitting in the living room? And in addition to that, there's a lot of games that you want to play where there has to be a separation between information. If we're playing poker, then it doesn't help if we have one screen and all the cards are shown on the big screen. Okay, so you actually have to have that second screen experience in order to engage with these games, and it's true to all the box-style games. Any game that you want to play that you have private information, you have to have a second screen in order to show that information. In addition to that, regarding the ADD generation, how many of you guys have a smartphone in your pocket right now? So that's about all of you. Is there anyone that doesn't have a smartphone except for Vikas?
Does a BlackBerry count?
No.
No,
Okay.
that's sort of an above average phone, really.
It's satisfactory.
That's my grandmother's phone.
Satisfactory phone.
I'm trying to support Canadian innovation here.
So the idea here is that all of us already know how to consume this content. I'm talking about us. I'm not talking about everybody in the consumer market. And yes, maybe we will need some kind of a physical controller that comes in the box that costs 10 cents to develop for that generation that is, sorry, but leaving us. Because the new kids, you know, I'm sure that all of you that have kids, you're like fighting with your children to take your iPhone and iPad away in the evening when you get home because they want to play Angry Birds and you want to read the news or get back to your mail. You know, and that's exactly it. This is a generation that has ADD, and they're going to be playing with multiple screens if we want it or not. The only question is if you want to connect that engagement to you or let them keep playing by themselves. Because they're sitting in the living room right next to you, not paying attention to anything that you're telling them. Go clean your room. Yeah, I'm just finishing Angry Birds, you know? And the point here is that take the same knowledge that they already consumed, and we had a huge argument about knowledge yesterday and what the new generation's losing and what they're gaining today. Take the knowledge that they already gained by the second screen experiences and connect that back to the main screen and turn that screen from a streamer TV into an actual smart TV that lets the whole family engage with it. Because that's what it's all about. If it's living room, then it has to be living room fun, and not me against a big screen by myself.
Yeah. I'm homesick. I'm going home, you know, after work. Usually my 14-year-old daughter is in front of the TV watching MTV or one of the channels, and her iPad is with Facebook usually, and she's texting on the phone. She's got all those screens, and I tell her, hey, what's up? You know, what's you're doing? And she's telling me nothing. And she has more screens than an Air Force pilot has usually in front of her. So, yeah, I'm talking about HD&D. Seriously, for me, second screen is like the best personal augmented layer over a shared experience. You have the TV show happening, but everybody wants another layer of information. So some people want their Twitter feed that's connect to what's happening right now. Some people want to see who's that actor and where he played, where do I know them before, or what's this guy doing, or what's this lady wearing. Excuse me for being so gender-oriented. Those layers of information are very personal because I don't want to see what my wife may want to see as an extra layer of information. And when you have a second screen, next to you that's connected, that's a perfect situation.
No, that makes sense. When we think about a second screen, I have a 5-year-old daughter who is a pro at Cooking Mama. But she thinks that just because she can play Cooking Mama, she wants the knife so she can cut onions in real life.
Of course.
So we're struggling with that a little bit. Obviously, being a Casual Connect, there's a bias very heavily towards gaming. And, everyone here is, a game developer, a game player to some extent or another. However, that said, either games or thinking beyond games, what do you think the real killer app for second screen or multi-screen experiences in the television environment is really going to be?
Well, I think it starts with communication more than anything else. I think the second screen is about, as I said, information, but when we'll add an ability of communication to it, it will become something that would be inherently important to us. And I don't have an answer what it will be. If I had, probably I'll have another startup or something. But communication somehow always revolve around, or killer application always revolve around that. And I think games are one of the best ways to actually explore our path into these killer app as games actually use all those interfaces and all these platforms to figure out, kind of the edge of what can be done and what should be done, and sometimes what should never be done with new platforms that's out there.
Well, in regards to your question, I believe that there's two things. First of all, everyone usually selects one targeted content that they want to bring first to actually tap a market and then start expanding. And games is, I think, it's not right to say the easiest one, but it's the most popular one because everyone likes playing, okay, in some kind of form of this or that. But I think that where it's going to get really interesting in the content that needs to be brought to smart TVs is when we start looking at already available content. Because if we're talking about like websites, like you have CNN, you have YouTube, you have Facebook, you have so many websites and so much content and so much information out there right now, and you actually need to start developing a new way to consume it, because people are not going to be sitting in front of the TV with thousands of lines of information trying to enlarge the font size and read it off the screen. So, one of the things that we did with Webaloo in the AT&T Hackathon a few weeks ago is actually try to see what kind of content can actually be interesting to put on the big screen, and it's not necessarily a game. And we worked with a team there that tried to look into productivity and utilities and a lot of things that can actually help you in day-to-day life. Because the TV, it's true that it's in the living room, but it's also at a train station, and it's also at the terminal at the airports, and in your meeting rooms. And when you're starting to look at that, and even right now, think about yourself not needing to stand in front of your computer to actually engage with the content, and think about all the people right here, instead of having to put up their hand, actually engaging in this conversation together, taking out their mobile phone, connecting to the screen that's currently being used, and engaging with us in reality. So I think that the ADD generation is starting to take control of us, and we need to rethink how to create content for the smart TV generation and smart TV revolution. Mm-hmm. And I believe that gaming is going to be a large segment in that market. But I believe that just like the iPhone, if you talk to someone about iPhone development 4 years ago, they would say, oh yeah, that's a gaming platform. And Apple were like, no, we're not a gaming platform. We hate games, no gaming platform. And today you have, Open Office on it, and you have like Presenter, and you have everything you need. And the people who moved from BlackBerry back into the Android and iPhone community understand that the BlackBerry is awesome for mail, but iPhone and Android is pretty good for mail too, and it's pretty good for internet. And maybe even better because the user interface is easier. So it's true. We need to start rethinking about how to bring the content that's already out there back into a new type of consumption, which is the big screen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really good feedback.
I just wanted to comment. I think in one of the earlier sessions, I think I saw somebody with an iPad 2 or 3, something that had a camera on it, and they held it up and they took a picture of of the screen. And then they wrote a bunch of notes on their screen and they emailed it to themselves so that they could assemble their notes back at the office when they got back to their laptop. And it just occurred to me that if you were able to connect to that screen, you could cut that down by like 3 steps.
Yeah, so the dynamic connectivity, we'll have that at Casual Connect next year then, right?
Maybe.
I don't know, will we?
We'll pick up the glove.
All right, good.
We'll pick up the glove for that.
So I've got a whole list of other questions as well. This is a great conversation. Are there any questions out there in the audience in the interim? No,
Come on, we know you got some
Everybody's
questions.
taking an after-lunch nap.
Yeah. So we'll shake things up in a second, but let me ask you guys. I mean, you both have very deep convictions here. We've heard some great sort of philosophical approaches. The market is a mess. It's fragmented, it's fractured, consumers are really confused. I'm pretty tech savvy. I couldn't recommend to somebody what TV to buy because I think the whole thing is just, it doesn't really matter right now. Given all of that and sort of how deeply you feel about what you guys have talked about, what are your biggest challenges today? What's the biggest problem you're facing? Let's start with you, Gur.
Well, we face a number of problems. The first problem is the manufacturers themselves that are all over the place. You have Samsung that just went rogue and developed their own operating system and their own SDK and API, and we're like, what's going on? You have Android. Stick to the program. Everybody's using Android. Do it the same. And I think that the thing here is that they're actually doing a race to create their own marketplace and try to do what Apple and Google did. But they're actually ruining it for the rest of us. And then you have LG and the rest of the manufacturers that don't really know exactly what they're doing. The second problem that we talk about is the hardware itself, which varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, and of course varies between versions of the hardware that they actually develop. So it's pretty hard to create content for these devices. That's the first thing. And we believe that it's going to be standardized, and you're going to see the right processors with the right GPU power and all that stuff pretty soon, maybe hopefully by the beginning of next year. The other thing is the technologies themselves, because you have people developing in Unity 3D for this, and you have people developing in native applications, and then there's web. So what we did at our company is we decided that the whole platform should be web developed, web-based, totally web, both on the mobile device and on the hardware itself, which is the virtual console. And then the developers themselves only have to develop once in order to create their content, and then we distribute it on all the OEMs. So it's our job to go and close deals with all the manufacturers to create that and actually ease. So that's also difficult. And then the last thing is actually pushing it out and showing developers that it's feasible and it's worth their while to actually develop on the platform. And a lot of developers, they're like, if I need to take my chance and go and develop for any platform, I'll do it either for iPhone or Android, because I believe that it's the easiest way to get there. But that's not true today. Today, to develop for the iPhone or the Android is as feasible as developing for the PC was 10 years ago. You actually need to have a marketing budget and a big budget in order to push yourself up to the 25, top 10, top 20 applications, because if not, then you're just going to be lost in this mayhem of multitude of applications that everybody's pushing there. So I believe that that's a good challenge, and it should start making third-party developers start developing for these platforms, because the first ones there with actual high-quality content that was developed for this, it's going to give them the freedom to operate before all the mass comes there and starts attacking. So those are the issues, and I believe they're right for us, and they're the same issues for third-party developers as well.
Yeah. Well, to echo what Gur is saying, there's no standardization. So when it comes to the hardware, when it comes to the operating system, when it comes to the controllers, you don't have one reference platform to work with. And they're changing fast. I mean, as we're speaking, that even, what's out there is changing. So what you do, and you do want to develop for TVs, because that's an exciting new platform. It really changes a lot of the rules that we know from web or PC or even mobile devices like a tablet or a phone. Today is really you develop something that has the lowest common denominator, and that's a lot of what we know as a first generation game, card game, stuff like that. And I think in this market you definitely need some mediators, and I know Transgaming is one of them, to help developers like Sidekick actually work and create that game, and then being able to deliver it across huge amount of very, very different platforms in different online stores, and kind of go over that huge hurdle that's now. I think everybody is waiting for that market to consolidate. So Apple would be probably one play that would do that. And until that time, I think we're just trying to figure out where's the best way to go, and what's the best game we can do in this current situation.
So, we've talked a lot about the fact that there's completely a lack of standardization right now in the industry. There are no two TV makers who are thinking about things the same way. Do you think standardization is going to happen? And I'm assuming you think if it does, it's good for everybody.
Standardization will have to happen. I'm crazy optimistic now, but it will have to happen because there's a lot of content and a lot of money in stake. If there will be no standardization, then an entire huge ecosystem that's sitting right next to the standard video streams would be lost. And the good thing about the TV makers is that they all want a chunk of that cake. Eventually, they will have to do something about that, but it takes a lot of time. The business units inside big organizations like Samsung and LG, and definitely companies that are more focused only on their TV business, are thinking very different from the guys that do phones or tablets. And while that's changing, it does take months and practically, I think, a couple of years from today, at least.
Gur, what do you think about standardization?
I think that it's more than that. I think that they're going to have to do two things. First of all, they're going to have standardization because developers are going to go crazy. You're going to have a lot of manufacturers out there that are creating their own hardware, and for each one of these, they're going to have to redefine their content based on the controller and based on the technology that's running out there. And you can see that in the phone industry as well. You had a lot of manufacturers there. You had Motorola and you had BlackBerry, you had, before Android, you had Nokia, and then you had the iPhone, of course. And then two of them actually took the lead and showed how it's done. iPhone came out and showed how it was done, and then Android came out and showed how it was done. And the rest of the market was either follow us or die or perish, because developers are going to put all their money on where they can actually work the fastest, put that product out as fast as possible to the market, and actually get a feedback as fast as possible as well from the market itself, and that depends on the market size. The other thing is, and that's something that I would like to pitch out, is that the TV industry cannot copy from the console market. And all of us are not saying this, but at some point you're going to see Sony have the Sony Sony PlayStation TV, and you're going to have a lot of stuff that consolidates a lot of technologies together. And when you're talking about consuming content, then it becomes a problem, because if you look at the history of consoles as an example, then you have Sony with its own network, you have Microsoft with its own network, and you have Nintendo with its own network. But today people are much more connected. Facebook allows you to connect and interact from anywhere, anytime with your friends, and it's social. So you want to connect and you want to play with your friends. And if Facebook was like, no, only Facebook USA, and then if I'm from Europe, then I have Facebook Europe, and I can't play with Facebook USA, then nobody would actually consume that kind of content. And when we're talking about smart TVs, we believe that content is going to be the same thing, and you're going to want your own networks. So, Samsung having their market and having their solution for themselves, and if you go to Android with a Google TV, having it on the other side, we're going to start seeing issues where people don't want to consume the content, or the developers themselves have to create their own social networks and content networks in order to actually distribute this. And if they will think about this in the near future, maybe they can actually keep the platform a bit more open so you can actually engage with content from multiple locations. And the solution from what we believe, if we're talking about standardization, is going web. Because web can actually run anywhere. So I can play the game on my TV, continue playing it on my tablet, and continue connecting and interacting with my friends on my social network from anywhere, just like I can do with Facebook. So think about Facebook style as a solution for everything.
Okay, so that's actually a very interesting perspective. So having said that, there's obviously a lot of talk and speculation about Apple coming out with their own Apple TV. Given what you guys have just said and sort of general thoughts, do you think that an Apple TV is going to be good, bad, or evil for the industry at large and for the consumer?
Steve, may you please forgive me, but evil.
Wait a minute. Apple does have an Apple TV.
Well, I'm talking about, let's call it an iPanel TV, right, as opposed to the little box. And now, interestingly enough, just again as a tangential comment, I read last night that Apple TV actually has the greatest market share of these kinds of products out there, which started off as a little hobby project, and obviously it's expanding into more. But I think the speculation is really around a fully connected iPanel type of television device by Apple. So given that, I mean,
That's not the iPad?
It's
well,
like an
we
iPad on
talked about this
steroids.
earlier, right? This is a TV is not a glorified iPad or a glorified desktop, right? It's a very customized individual experience.
Oh, I get it. An Apple TV.
Yeah.
Like a piece of hardware called an Apple TV.
Yes.
Ah, I got it. I see.
Why do you think it's evil?
So first of all, like we said before, Apple TV, it's not exactly a TV yet. It's more like a content streamer. So we're still in the safe zone there, because I haven't seen a lot of content actually, get there, except for like Netflix stuff and all the iTunes store and stuff like that. So once it actually goes there, first of all, we're going to have to talk about hardware and see where it can actually go. But I think it's going to be evil for the same reason that we're starting to understand today about the Apple ecosystem. That it's a closed garden. Most of us actually help Apple get, higher and higher in the food chain as we actually kind of, dive deeper and deeper in the ecosystem and can't really find our way out. And what Apple tried to do, with all their featured and all their latest releases and all that stuff, you see third-party developers starting to set up their own networks of advertisement and publishing and stuff like that to actually help those little people get up there. And every time you get a closed ecosystem, you have the same problem, because the big players, and I was just in a panel before that where they talked about Zynga, the big players get big really fast and start to catch up all the top places, and then they have enough money to actually market themselves. And us, we all leave our jobs and say, okay, I'm going to be an iPhone developer and I'll have my own little studio and I'll develop my content. And we figure out that after we have this great, amazing game that our friends love, we don't have the capacity to back up this game and actually push it into the market. So closed ecosystems do tend to be an issue.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that.
No.
And Guy, what do you think? Good, bad, or evil?
The Apple TV, the TV that has all the smartness inside, is going to be sheer heaven of awesomeness. It provides standards. Everybody will want one. It will be strong enough. It will have a great big screen. And it will allow us as game developers to develop for one platform and enjoy everything that's around a stable ecosystem. And when it comes out, for the very first few hours or maybe days, we all have, for one very quick moment, kind of the same option to take a new game up there and really be first to market. I'm really looking forward for that day, for that moment. Yes, biggers will be big, but we will have, and mark my words, we will have another Angry Birds, which is not Angry Birds for the TV. We will have another small new set of games that are perfect for that platform. And the reason that new talent will come in is because we'll have that standard and because we'll have that number of, power of Apple bringing in a new standard into the market.
That's a great perspective.
I just
two
have
very
one
different
question.
viewpoints.
A short one. Where are we going to store all those TVs? Because Apple every 6 months come out with a new iPhone, and we're all like, I gotta get the new one, I gotta get the new one. And we're going to be doing the same thing with like 30 to 60-inch TVs. Where are we going to store all these TVs that we throw
You'll
every
have
6
one
months?
in each room.
Yeah.
Mortgage
Hand it
rates
down
are
to your
still low, so bigger houses to then house all these TVs as well.
The fact that you still need those things where you look outside windows, it's all going away.
The sun and
It
the
will all
green?
be
We
Apple
just
TV.
need TVs.
yes.
With a new Retina screen, you can.
You'll
have
decide
TV
what you
all
want to see out.
We just need to put some UV into that light that the TV puts out, and we don't need the sun anymore.
So we're into the last couple of minutes, and I do want to leave a few minutes for questions as well. Final thoughts. What are your two lessons learned or advice that you can offer to the audience as they think about smart TV, multi-screen, and opening up possibilities around that?
I'm super excited. I mean, the reason we've gone into this market is that we were all super excited about working and creating games for a totally new platform that mixes a new controller with a big screen that we know from our console past, but speaking to a very, very large, let's say casual, but large audience. That allowed us to come up with some new innovative stuff that we really look to do. You know, the flip side is that we came in very early, and we still think it's going to happen. It's not an if question, it's a when, and we're paving our way into this market for the next couple of years at least.
I think that when you start looking into new markets that have never been explored, you have to be really innovative and think out of the box. Don't take anything for granted. We did a lot of that in the beginning of actually trying to figure out what the best, control schemes and stuff like that would be for the TV. And we figured out that we were taking old concepts and bringing them to a totally new environment that it just didn't match the requirements. And seriously, think out of the box and do a lot of testing. Test this on real people out there to see what their input is, and go with them and be open-minded to see that actually you're not developing this giant that doesn't match the needs of the market that you're currently trying to tap into.
That's great. So do we have time for a few questions?
I have one question for
Please.
the audience, if you don't mind. Is there anybody in the room here who's absolutely sure that in the next 6 months to a year you're going to put a game on an interactive television? Raise your hand if you're sure.
3 people.
Why?
Because it's fun.
You like the idea of having your games on a TV?
Just because
Right.
Is there anybody in here who's absolutely sure that you are not going to put a game on interactive television in the next 6 months to a year? Why?
Hardware isn't there yet.
Okay, any questions for the panel?
We've got one right up here.
Oh,
The Apple changing the world yet again, put that to a side. But even these smart TVs, new TVs come out, new smart TVs come out from the big manufacturers. 9 months later, they're boasting they have 1 million units in the field. Half of those go, to some stockbroker's, living room where he doesn't actually use it except to watch Lost. So it's not actually being used for its intent. How big is the actual market? I mean, we don't, as you just said, we don't buy TVs that often. Even if Apple changes all the rules and sells 10 million, in the first 6 months, that's still not touching the handset market or anything in terms of volume.
Not yet. Maybe I'll start off with the answer. The typical television cycle used to be 7 years. So you would upgrade your television every 7 years. And very much like with the mobile market, that's now starting to shrink. Now it's shrinking, that time horizon, more slowly than with mobile devices, because you don't really have anyone subsidizing them for you other than the TV makers themselves. But what we've seen is that people have been waiting for smart TVs to become better, to become more pervasive. And so that 7-year cycle actually has been longer for a lot of the TV makers. Now what's going to happen is that globally we're going to go through this massive shift in the next 3 to 4 years of lots and lots of TVs being purchased. And that's why when you look at the data points, the numbers are ridiculous. I mean, the expectation is that in 2016, 153 million televisions will get shipped, brand new ones. So, we're really early on. I mean, I think a year from now when we have a similar panel like this at Casual Connect, the room is going to be packed because the pace of evolution here is dramatic, and everyone who is much more tech savvy is looking to do an upgrade in the next year to 2 years.
so thank you for volunteering to do a panel next year at Casual Connect Seattle. That's fantastic. I hope all of you will show up for Vicus's panel in Casual Connect 2013.
There you go. Do you guys have perspectives on that proliferation?
I think that what you said before was actually right, and the question is, it's a great question because all we get is statistics from the manufacturers themselves that are actually pushing this hardware out, and I can tell you that I at home have an HD TV that I never connected to HD, and I've had it for 5 years. So that's exactly the problem, and I am tech savvy. The point is that, there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. And I think that this is it all depends on marketing, because if you look at the hardware manufacturers, they just want to get those units out of the factory as fast as possible. But if they actually start marketing it to the correct audience, then people who actually want these smart TVs are going to buy them. But in order for that to happen, there has to be content and technology that's worth their while. Because they're not going to buy a smart TV because it says smart TV. If you're tech savvy, then you want to see that the browser can actually work there and it's easy to use. And then you get back to the content itself. And I think that the answer to that question is going to come from people like us that are actually out there trying to push our, software and content onto those TVs, and we can actually see how many unique users we get every month. So we will be able to say that maybe we have 5% of market share, and this is the amount of monthly active users that we have, and this is what it comes up to as a statistic in the market itself. But I think it's a bit too early to tell because there's not enough of them actually connected to the ecosystem.
There's enough, I mean, it's what, 300 million TVs are being sold every year in general. The path is very clear where just like the flat panel TV kind of took over the world in less than 10 years, I want to say. Adding the smartness, well, connectivity to begin with, and then the more smart back end of each TV, whether it will be part of the TV or an external box, is happening. Yes, and it's up to the content, and I think here in the US actually with local services like Hulu and Netflix, and worldwide with services like YouTube and other similar services, it's happening, and it's happening very, very fast. It won't happen, again, it's not a market that's happening this year or next year in terms of the large volumes that you're looking for, like phones, but look 2-3 years from now, you're looking at a massive platform, new platform, and it is a totally new platform. It's not a glorified iPad, as you said. Mm-hmm. It's a totally new, very fun experience.
That's great. I think we're out of time, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Guy and Gore. Very exciting and engaging panel, so thank you guys.
Thank you very much.